people quoted in that. We looked really good. It was a good piece. Okay, before I hand it off to Eric, does anybody have any questions? All right, anything in the chat?
No.
Okay, all right, Eric, you ready to take it away?
Sure. Thank you. That was a tough act to follow. Really good. So again, my name's Eric Engle. What I want to talk to folks about, I'm coming up here to use this board. So I'm doing it old school. She was more technologically advanced than I am this evening. And so what I want to go through is actually just writing letters to the editor and op-ed columns. And those are two different things, okay? So letters to the editor are shorter. And the first things I want to mention are actually the word limits, because every editor will have word limits when it comes to letters to the editor, and then also for op-ed columns. So the letters to the editor, we'll put LTTE 300 to 400 words is typically what you're going to run into with editors. So you really don't want to surpass 300 to 400 words, generally speaking, with letters to the editor. With op-ed columns, you can usually get away with about 500 to 700 words. And you generally do not want to exceed that. Now, working with Christina Meyer and Ben Fields, who's the editor at the Charleston Gazette-Mail, very, very good. They will, at times, if they have the space and if they feel like they can accommodate it, they have accommodated as many as 800 and even 900 words with writers that we have submitted. But generally speaking, they will tell you, vast majority of the time, please don't exceed these word limits if you want it to get published. And they do have different approaches. So Christina will publish, when it comes to op-eds and letters to the editor, exactly what you submit. That's spelling and grammatical errors, anything that you may have published that was later found not to be true. Someone Googles what you published and says, hey, they published something false. It gets published, because it's not the editor's responsibility to fact check you in an opinion piece. This isn't a news piece. This isn't a PR submission. This is your opinion that you're sharing with the public. So you want to fact check yourself, and you want to run that spell checker, and you want to make sure that, and it's good, it really is a good practice to get a letter to the editor or an op-ed in front of at least 2 to 3 other sets of eyes. The more people can help you edit your content before you submit it, the better. No matter how many times you read and reread your own work, you may skip over a grammatical error or a spelling error that you made, or something that you omitted, whatever, over and over again. So it's really good to have someone else, especially someone maybe with some editing experience, someone who's a writer, if you know someone like that, that you can share your piece with before you submit it. And maybe there's a better way of doing it. Now, and that brings me to the point of Ben Fields. And his approach is he doesn't publish exactly what you submit. Ben will go through, and if he can correct spelling and grammatical errors for you, he will, if he can pick those up. And he's a very experienced editor who's very good at that. If there's a shorter, simpler, more concise way to say something, like he felt like maybe you had a run-on sentence or a rambling thought in your piece, he'll make it a little bit more concise. He doesn't change the base of what you're saying. He doesn't alter your piece to the point where it doesn't look like your piece. But he tries to convey what you're saying in a more simple, concise way. And a lot of good editors will do that. I see Christina's point in just publishing what you send. Not only is that easier on her, but it's authentic, right? But with Ben, his take on it is, if I can help you kind of clean up the language and make your thinking a little bit more concise and accurate, I'm going to help you do that. So it's different based on the editor. So what I'd really like to do is kind of talk about my process for submitting letters to the editor and op-eds. The vast majority of what I submit are op-eds because I'm really wordy, right? Like if I want to say something and write it to a paper, it's probably going to take me 700 or 800 words or more to say it. So I'm not going to limit myself to 300 to 400 words typically, unless I, have some reason for that. But in my process, what I do is the biggest thing for me that I think is so important if you're going to start writing op-eds and letters to the editor is to identify not only your interests and your passions, what matters. The Mario theme, I love it. Truly what matters to most to you as a person. So this is what I was talking about with loose leaf paper earlier. If you all have some that you want to write on just to go along with me, if not, that's okay. I am going to write 4 examples of things that motivate my writing. And this, I mean, we're a political group here, right? So it probably is going to be political in nature with this group. But it doesn't always have to be. Maybe it's just an interest, a hobby. You know, you hike, you bike, you swim. You're a poetry writer, whatever it is that motivates you to write. But for this purposes of this group, if you that's fine. So the 4 that usually motivate me to write have to do with my identity as a union rep. Just put union. As I mentioned earlier, a climate nonprofit leader, so I'll just put MOVCA. I'm often motivated to write as someone who does non-theistic or atheistic secular advocacy, so I'll just put, for simplicity, atheist. And then as like a 4th level of kind of what motivates me, a lot of my interests or passions have to do with like policy. So government policy, union policy, actually my job, and it sounds really heck of a lot fancier than it is financial systems analyst. But part of what I do at the Bureau has been reviewing policy like federal travel guidance. I work in federal travel. And so they have federal travel regulations. So a lot of times I'll review and apply regulatory frameworks to the work I do. So I've always kind of enjoyed law and policy, rules and regs, and that motivates a lot of my writing. So what I want you to do is just for some engagement here, think about 3 or 4 things, doesn't have to be 4, 3 or 4 things that about yourself that would motivate you to write an op-ed. Not necessarily write a book or a poem or something like that, or a news piece or a PR release, but actual op-ed or letter to the editor. What would motivate you? We'll just take a minute to do that. I'll give you a second to think about it there.
There was a recommendation in the chat. Someone said, I also recommend reading your pieces out loud as I have found errors while speaking before sending.
Oh, that's very good advice. Yeah, reading them out loud. Because you do read much more carefully if you're giving it in an out loud spoken format. That's really good advice. I still see some people writing, so we'll take just another few seconds here and let folks do what they're going to do here. Okay, looks like everyone's done writing there. So does anyone want to shout out one thing that they put about themselves? I don't want to put anyone on the spot.
Being a mom.
Being a mom. Being a mom. I'll just put mom up here.
Female.
Female.
Yep.
Local history.
Local history.
World history.
Excellent. World history. I'll put world here in parentheses.
I put hearing aids, but I think it could also be expanded to healthcare.
Healthcare, as an example, hearing aids, which is so important because apparently health insurers, public and private, think that ears, eyes, and teeth aren't health. I don't know what that is. Okay.
Public schools.
Public schools.
Climate alarmist.
Climate alarmist, she says. Alarmist is the right attitude.
Rights of the disenfranchised.
Disenfranchised rights. Disenfranchised to shorten it.
I'll put a naturalized citizen.
naturalized citizen or immigration policy?
Naturalized citizen, and I mean,
That's you. That's
that's me.
You are a migrant from Canada, right?
I am a naturalized citizen from Canada.
From Canada. You are a naturalized citizen.
I'm not a migrant.
Not a migrant. Okay, so anyone else? Let's see if I think we got the word count here. This might work better. Might not. The library may be reading this for a while unless they have.
Eric, I do have a spray in that cardboard box at your feet. It's, yeah.
Okay.
She was going to wait for you to be done with that before telling you that.
Okay. Just let me do that for a little bit. No, I get it. So we have, it's something I would definitely do. So we have mom, being a female, local and world history, healthcare, especially ears and what they don't consider healthcare for some reason. Public schools, climate alarm, rights of the disenfranchised, and life as a naturalized citizen and what that entails. Anyone else? Okay, so I mean, you see this, here's my 4. You see that so many different things from so many different perspectives motivate your writing. And before you go to write an op-ed or a letter to the editor, you really want to sit with these things for a while. Don't get in a rush. That is one of my biggest pieces of advice I can give you. Do not rush it. Don't rush it. I mean, if you get, especially if you're not an experienced writer you haven't done it for a long time, you don't have a whole lot of experience with it, take your time with it. Really think out what it is you want to say, because there may be something in the moment that you're really passionate about. You're angry, you're upset. Maybe there's been a death in the family because of our crappy healthcare system. Maybe you are starting to get bills in the mail from Mohila again for your $200,000 in college loan debt or whatever. I don't have that much, but I know people who do. And in that moment, you're extremely angry and you're like, I just want to get this out in a letter to the editor or an op-ed. Take time, sit with that. Sit with that and think out all the angles of that you want to consider. So I write a lot about climate change. I may see something in the news I do see something in the news every day that infuriates me about climate change and our overall disregard for life on our only planet that we can occupy in the cosmos, right? Don't have another one. Elon Musk wants to jump to another one. Good luck. Just hop on that rocket, bub. But we don't have another one that we know we can occupy and live on. So, I see something every day that upsets and infuriates me about climate change. If I jump right to the computer right now and start trying to formulate ideas about that, that's fine. Sit down and formulate ideas, maybe write a couple of paragraphs and see what it is you're trying to say and really think about that. But I highly advise you don't try to crank out 300 or 400 words, or especially 500 or 700 words, and submit that right away, just because you're so angry in that moment. Give it time, let it simmer. There's probably other details to consider as well. Here's a good example. I wrote a lengthy email. This wasn't an op-ed piece or an LTTE. It could become one. But I wrote a lengthy email to City Council yesterday. I had a lot to say. I thought about it for hours. It took me about an hour to get it all down. But in that moment, I hadn't had the chance yet to read the newspaper and some news coverage about what I was talking about. So one thing to keep in mind that I didn't include in my email, and my email was about the fact that they want 5 sponsors now instead of 3 to add an item to the public meeting agenda. Well, they only want the 5 sponsors instead of 3 for discussion items. Now, you could still introduce a resolution or an ordinance as a city council member with 3 instead of 5. But if you want to discuss something at a public meeting as a city council member and put that on the agenda so that you can, they want 5. Now, there's a reason they did that, and that's why I wrote the email, right? There's a reason that they're considering it tomorrow night at 7:30 at the municipal building. But if I had taken the time to be able to get my newspaper, which now comes, I read a physical copy of the newspaper for the most part. I also read digital, but I was waiting on the physical copy because it was a weekend. I get the weekend edition that way. And it now comes by U.S. mail. It's going to start coming by U.S. mail, which runs later in the day than the folks who threw it to your door. So I didn't have it yet, and I hadn't read it digitally yet. So if I had read that first, I may have reworded my email just a little bit. So give things time to fester, things time to not necessarily fester. That sounds like it's just automatically getting worse. Figure out the details. Think through the details. Think through some different perspectives about what you're angry about, or what you are just passionate and want to write about. Maybe it's positive. And before you put that down, really stop and consider and think things through. But this was so good because just in this one room with just a few people here this evening, we have so many examples of what motivates people to write and issues surrounding these things. And sort of the next, I don't necessarily have to keep using this up here, but the next thing we can do before I wrap up is if you stop and think about these issues you gave, or another one entirely, whatever, and think about what angle you would take. So let's just take some examples up here. If your example was you are a mom, what angle would you take if you wanted to write an op-ed tomorrow or this week? I'm telling you to take longer than tomorrow, right? If you wanted to write an op-ed for submission by the weekend edition when they run, about being a mom and what it's like in this moment to be a mom, what would your take be?
I'm angry.
You're angry. You're really angry. But what? Let's say one thing. There's 50 million, right?
Yeah.
But what is one thing that comes to mind that makes you angry as a mom in this moment? If you're comfortable saying, I don't want to put you on the spot.
It's just putting it down to one. My oldest has health issues. And as a mom, I'm very limited on what I can and cannot do. And we are kind of just even limited with what doctors will and won't do.
Because for like insurance reasons and these bogus American healthcare reasons. Okay.
Yeah. So that's very, very frustrating.
Guaranteed. Yeah, absolutely. With the rights of the disenfranchised, what's if you were to write about the rights of the disenfranchised, what angle would you take? Just if you wanted to submit.
Right now, it's along the same lines as what you are talking about. City council representation, them doing everything they can to violate the ability for people in the minority, what they deem, because our council's divided 7-2, and prohibiting them from having an equal voice at the table. They claim to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and that specifically has been written over the years to allow protection of those that are not in power to be a part of, even though it protects the majority vote. It is specifically designed to empower those that are in the minority to still have a place at the table. And they're doing everything to violate that as possible.
That would be, and that would be a great angle to take. I would love to read it. Who said local history? What do you think would motivate you to write about local history?
If I'm a mom still, or what's the?
Oh no, just your perspective on any perspective on local history.
Okay, because I was trying to think if I'm a mom, what? I think I would see, has this happened before? Something like this has happened before, and what happened, and when did it happen?
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of people here don't realize who was through here, who has been in this town, and I think a lot of times they think that that Parkersburg has, I'm talking about Parkersburg, I'm not.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But Parkersburg has generally just always been just a little place on the river, and it was major at the turn of the century.
Yeah, absolutely, and that would be a great perspective. And then also sort of that perspective of nothing new under the sun, right? Like we've seen it before,
right?
And how did we handle it before? Yeah. So that offers a really good perspective. Someone else said, I think, world history. Who said world history?
Well, it's probably been done to death, but I think it bears repeating parallels of what's happening now and say what's happened in the world history, like in World War II.
Yeah.
And what we see coming, or what we can extrapolate from that.
And that would be really good, maybe to talk about some of that World War II history that a lot of folks aren't as familiar with. I know from a labor point of view, just to kind of give from the union perspective, making the trip on the 9th down to Lenore, West Virginia, and seeing the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum, and grabbing a couple books and just finishing one this week, and kind of understanding aspects of that history that I never have before. That is something that, as a West Virginian, I feel robbed of, because I turned 40 years old this year, and this is my first real experience with. I've heard of Blair Mountain and the West Virginia Mine Wars before, but not in any detail, not in any meaningful context. So, I wrote a recent Substack entry about my trip down there and what that was like, and what it was like to be in person in the coal fields in Mingo County, West Virginia, and go to that Mine Wars Museum, which is run by an incredible couple, an incredible staff, and get to see the local union down there, the Union Hall for 1440, United Mine Workers of America. So that was a perspective that, as a West Virginian, I feel like I should have had before, even just with a public school K through 12 education, without going to college or anything. And I feel like I was, and many of us are, robbed of some of the most important labor history in the world that happened pretty much on our doorstep, because there's just no broader educational or public discussion of what really occurred there. And so that motivated me to write. So that's essentially what I want to leave you with. I mean, Merrill really discussed, and a lot of what Merrill discussed is also applicable to op-ed writing and letter to the editor writing, in terms of, you want to lead with something strong, your who, what, where, when, why, and how, and develop, that reverse pyramid style with the body and a strong conclusion. It is still good if you're writing a letter to the editor or op-ed, especially op-ed because it's lengthier. If you leave something at the end that's an action item for someone to carry forward. So I'm not just listening to this Eric Engle, or I'm not just reading this Eric Engle guy ranting. At the end, he tells me I need to contact my congressperson about supporting this legislation, or I need to contact a member of the House of Delegates in West Virginia about opposing this legislation, or maybe it's not even policy related. I need to go to the next Wood County Board of Education meeting because something's happening. Leave them with something to do, something to think about, maybe a strong quote about whatever your subject matter was. Just leave them thinking and prepared to act in some way and move forward in some way and take what you wrote them in a meaningful direction for themselves, the broader public. And encourage them to get involved. When I wrote this past weekend our Mid-Ohio Valley Climate Action Climate Corner column, which we've been writing weekly to the Parkersburg News and Sentinel since March of 2021, and we have a stable of about 12 or 13 writers right now, I always end it with something along the lines of, here's what we're doing with this past weekend I ended it with, here's what we're doing with our website. We're revamping it and making it this. Please visit it at this address. Look us up on Facebook on our popular group page. You can look through 10 years of posts there with a search catalog. So you give them something to do and ways to become involved, and hopefully down the road you see them, like with Mid-Ohio Valley Climate Action, maybe someone does get involved, or they learn something from that piece that they can take away and do something with, even if they don't want to get directly involved with us. So definitely leave them with an action piece or something motivating that they can take away that's really going to make them think and research more and delve more into what you wrote about. So, any questions for me? Okay, great. Thanks for yeah, go ahead.
About you.
I've been a beat reporter for the Parkersburg News and for the Daily Mail in Charleston 100 years ago, before I reinvented myself and became a nurse at 40. But probably, I don't know, my kid was still in high school and she's been out for 8 years. I was having a conversation with a friend in Charleston who is an attorney who works with the West Virginia Supreme Court about an op-ed piece written by a man named Eric Engle. And we were having this discussion, and we knew another Eric Engle in Charleston who was also an attorney. And I was like, did our Eric write this? And my friend was like, I don't think so. And she's like, I like this guy. I was like, I like him too. And here I am. You know, I moved here 6 years ago, and here I am with Eric Engle. And so you really are having an impact with your writing, and I hope you continue.
Thank you so much.
You're
it's
very
so
welcome.
reassuring to hear
I
that.
hope you continue, because you are noticed, and that was that long ago. So yeah,
that is amazing. And you know, one other quick story I'll share, I know we're coming up on an hour of being here, is I wrote a piece to an op-ed down there, and a friend of mine got married, and he married a girl who was the granddaughter of a federal district court judge who had decided in my favor as a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the city of Parkersburg, right? At the time, 97-year-old man who was appointed by Gerald Ford. And he ruled, and this was just the greatest ruling I've ever read. It was 30 pages of just constitutional jurisprudence like you've never seen. He's a brilliant man. There's a reason he's still on the bench at almost 100 years old. Now he is 100 years old. But I met him at their wedding because this was her grandfather. And she came up to me, and I had no idea this was her grandfather. And she said, my grandfather would like to meet you. And I'm, okay, well, who's that? And she tells me it's this judge. And I'm like, really? And so I go, and I'm like, just because he ruled in my favor? Or like, yeah, I'll go talk to him. He's like, no, I read you in the Charleston Gazette Mail. I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's great to meet you too. And it was such an honor that this man with this brilliant legal mind, who's been on the bench for decades, read me in the Charleston Gazette and said he enjoyed reading what I wrote. And I was like, that was very powerful. Yeah, and so I really appreciate your story and everyone's time this evening, and thank you all so much.
I'll
see if
also
I can raise
throw
this
this
forward.
out there as a newspaper reporter. We don't want to hear bitching. Like,
Yeah.
that was the last thing. Like, don't be that person. Don't make what you're doing a complaint. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. There's a way to make it positive. There's
Right.
a way to spin it in a positive way. Try to find that way.
That's good.
It's very good.
Recommendation.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What happens, talking about disenfranchisement, if they jam the SAVE Act through, say, in August of next year?
Give me a
Say
little.
back, I won't be able to vote.
We, unfortunately, all the city councilors are elected on the same cycle of 4 years, which is...
No, I'm talking about disenfranchisement.
Okay,
The
I guess I'm not
SAVE
understanding.
Act requires you prove of citizenship to vote.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult for.
Oh, absolutely. Any of the voting
And
restrictions...
you're going to go in, you're going to submit your real ID is not